Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be discussing my May wrap-up. I'm also going to talk about some of the books that I read from the May TBR video and of course some of the ones that I did not. This is my second time remaking this video, so please bear with me. Will it be better than the last one? You know, who knows. Let's go ahead and get into it. So first I'm going to talk about the books that I read from the May TBR video. I read 8 books total this month, and 4 of them are from the TBR video, and then 4 are just ones I kind of picked based on my mood and read. So the first book that I read was Defy Me. This is the 5th book in the Shatter Me series. There's one more after this, I believe. I was gonna read the next one, the last one, and I don't know what happened to the book. I cannot find it anywhere. I honestly think I took it somewhere and left it there. So until I find that copy or just buy a new one, I'm gonna wait to finish the series. However, I devoured this. I think I finished it in one day. I rated it 5 stars. I think this is the best book in the series, or at least the best book so far since I haven't finished the series, but this is by far my favorite. You really got to see the history of Aaron and Juliet and their past, which I think once you see that part or read that part, you understand now kind of where Aaron's coming from. And, you know, we stan Aaron. We love Aaron. Also, I still love Kenji. Kenji is one of my favorite characters from the series. I think he might be my number 1 and then Aaron, which might be controversial, but I don't know. I loved him. He was great. If you stopped the series like me and weren't sure if you should continue on, let me tell you, continue on. It is worth it. And I will finish it once I find the other book, I promise. So I rated this 5 stars, fantastic, great all around. So the next book I read was The Great Alone by Kristin Hannah. This was a book club pick for me to read. I was a little worried because I know Kristin Hannah, her books they're all very long. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a pretty thick book. I think it was around 500, 600 pages. It's 545 pages. And I know her pacing is a lot slower. So I was worried that I wasn't going to be able to get into it. Slower books are harder for me to get into it. Also, her books are, correct me if I'm wrong, her books are historical fiction, and for me that's one of the categories, I feel like categories isn't the correct word, genres, subgenre. Anyway, that's not really one that I tend to read a lot of. I tend to DNF those just because it's harder for me to get into. I'm definitely more of like a fantasy romance gal, but this surprised me. I really got into this, even though it is very slow paced. I felt like it just sucked me into this world, and I ended up finishing it in 2 days. Only look up the trigger warnings. It can be really tough to read in some of the spots. It talks very detailed about domestic abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse. It's a very strong topic throughout the whole book, not just one part. So please look up the trigger warnings. This might not be for you. I know I definitely had to sit the book down a couple of times to get through it, but it was worth it. And I think it is written in a way that's very detailed to someone going through that. I loved it. I think it was very beautifully written, and I gave it 4 stars. I didn't give it a complete 5 because of something that happened in the book. I don't want to say because I feel like it's a little bit of a spoiler, but the emotional roller coaster this put me through was unexpected, but I'm really glad I read it, and I will definitely be looking into more Kristin Hannah books. So if you have any that you've read and loved, send the recs my way. I want to read more. So the next book that I read was also another book club pick, and it's The Verifiers by Jane Peck. So this is a sapphic mystery set in the This is a sapphic mystery set in the matchmaking industry, and I thought that was a really cool concept. There is some family drama like packed into this as well. When I was reading this, I felt like the family drama in it kind of took over the plot than I think what the actual plot was supposed to be. I found myself kind of wanting to DNF this just because I really couldn't get into it, and I don't know, the mystery just really didn't catch my eye at all. I did stick it out and finish it, and I felt like even the end of the mystery, where you kind of figure out what actually happened, was kind of lackluster. I think it's more of like a cozier, slow mystery where you're supposed to kind of sit down, and maybe I wasn't in the right, I don't know, season to read this. If you read this more in the fall, maybe you'd get more into it. I don't know. For me, it was a miss. I think I rated it 2.5 stars out of 5. Just personally not for me, but finished it, got through. Next up, and the last book from the TBR video that I actually read was Travis by Mia Sheridan. And if you read Archer's Voice, you find out that Archer has a brother in that, and this is his brother's book, Travis. So Travis is the chief of police, and I think her name's Haven. Haven comes into town. He ends up pulling her over. She has too many plants in her car, and she can't, it's like obstructing her view of the car, so he had to pull her over, and she has to kind of take out some plants. So they start off on like a rocky foot because that's how they first meet. They do end up forming like a friendship. So it turns out it kind of ends up being strangers to friends to lovers, or just friends to lovers if you want to just simplify it. It's also small town, forced proximity, something happens, and they ended up having to stay in the same place for a little bit. I love this. I was really worried that I wasn't going to like Travis at all, considering if you've read Archer's Voice, I'm not going to spoil anything. Just Travis wasn't the best person in that. He was kind of terrible. But in this, you kind of really see how he's turned his life around. And you see his view from the events that happened in that, and his family history, which is very complicated and very not fun for him. I rated this 4 stars. I didn't give it a complete 5 because I felt like it was just missing something. Like it just didn't have that 5-star feeling that you get. But it was so good. I highly recommend picking this up if you've read anything by Mia Sheridan or Archer's Voice specifically. Very good. So now I'm going to talk about the books that I read that were more mood read picks. They did not come from my TBR. So first up we have From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. Once again, it's another slow burn, and slow burns just make me so nervous to read. However, I know Mariana Zapata is like known for being the queen of slow burns, so I think if any slow burn is going to make me love it, it's got to be by her. So I went ahead and read this. I surprisingly loved it. I did it 4 stars. A figure skating romance, and it's also best friend's brother, which I did not know. So basically, some of the plot is he needs a new skating partner. Him and his manager ask Jasmine Santos. Some deliberation, Jasmine accepts, even though she has had this terrible history and she doesn't like Ivan. Even though she doesn't like Ivan, she accepts because he is a multiple, I think, world champion in figure skating. He is basically the best in this industry, especially for pair skating. He's like the #1 to have. So of course she accepts. And as figure skating partners, they spend so much time together that they kind of start to bond. They start to bond, and she opens up to him, and it was just so surprisingly sweet. And it's definitely a slow burn. I don't think they even kissed until, oh my gosh, like 400 something. Like it was a while in. But you can definitely just feel that their connection is genuine and how it starts to build. It was just so sweet. Next up, we have Roomies by Christina Lauren. So for the longest time, I didn't realize that Christina Lauren are 2 separate people writing together. This is Marriage of Convenience. It's strangers to friends to lovers. Even though they're married, they're strangers. So we have Holland Baker in this, who is a girl who is working in the theater industry for her uncle. And she comes across Calvin, who's a musician that was playing in the subway station that she takes every day. And she ends up being obsessed with his sound and kind of goes to sneak on and watch him all the time now. Her uncle ends up needing someone to fill in for a spot because they're losing people. So Holland brings her uncle down to the subway station to hear Calvin play. He hears him play and he asks him immediately to audition. They want him in after he auditions, and it turns out he's not from this country. And his student visa, I believe they said in the book it expired 4 years prior to that. So Holland decides to take matters into her own hand, and she essentially asks Calvin to marry her so that she can provide someone for her uncle. Just kind of see everything unfold from there. I love this. I rated it 4 stars. I didn't give it 5 because there were a couple of miscommunications, and which, I mean, they were strangers to be fair, so a couple of details that they left out from each other kind of come back to bite them in the butt. But like a couple of things could have just been taken out and it would have been fine. So 4 stars. Next up, I have Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I love this cover so much. So this is age gap, small town and big city. It kind of has a found family aspect as well in it, which I found really sweet. I will say my favorite part of this was the age gap for the fact that it was reversed. So I feel like in most books that have an age gap, it's always the guy's older and then the girl's younger. But in this, it was, I think she was in her 30s and he was in his 20s. It was so good. I think it's really only brought up a couple of times, maybe by her in the beginning. But after that, once they actually start getting together and like getting to know each other, you never hear about it again, and they just click so well. I did write down a quote from this because I thought it was so good. So if you needed a reason to read this, here you go. 8,000 nerves in the clitoris and still not as sensitive as a white man not getting his way. So good. So freaking good. It reminded me of a Hallmark movie in a way, but a little less cheesy. I give it 4 stars. I loved every second of it. Next up, I have Flawless by Elsie Silver. And this is my first cowboy romance book. I was kind of taken by surprise. Rhett's a bull rider who basically gets himself in trouble. He does something stupid on live television. His PR agent then has a meeting with him and is basically like, hey, companies are dropping out because of what you did, and I'm gonna send this agent to you. She's gonna live with you for a while and basically babysit you and make sure you don't do anything dumb anymore. Summer comes into play. She is the agent that gets sent out, and she's also the owner of the agency's daughter. I personally loved Summer because of her attitude. I really love when female characters are written so that they don't take crap from anybody. They stand up for themselves and they have a very, like, I don't know, kick-ass kind of attitude. I love that about her. I did think the names were a little cheesy. So her name's Summer, and then in the book you meet her half-sister, and her half-sister's name is Winter. I was like, okay, maybe that's a little too much, but I love this book so much. It took me a day to read, and I went ahead and bought the rest of the series. I'm excited for them to come in. I even bought little cowboy slippers. It's a smiley face and it has a cowboy hat on it. I'm so excited for the rest of the series. I am especially excited for the next book. It's about one of Rhett's brothers that made an appearance in this book, and I am so excited. So here are all the books that I read in May. There's a total of 8. I know there hasn't been a video in a minute. I was having some technical difficulties. Hopefully they're sorted out now. I am looking for probably a new vlog camera since I'm just using one of my old photography cameras right now. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. See you guys.